and then compare that to what the county pays to the city, I think is, in my opinion, everybody's voiced their opinion. My opinion is we should continue to charge a license for dogs or animals, and so that can be enforced by our animal control officer and our sheriff's office simply by a number. So utilizing the amount of money, we spend money on different things. I think the difference in the cost for net received and cost for enforcement is minimal compared to the damage that it would do if we didn't have some type of regulation on the animals. That's my opinion. But this is the first reading on this ordinance. You've heard from all the commissioners. Each one of us have our own opinion, and I respect everybody's opinion, believe me. So we will have a second reading on this, but if there's anybody in the public who else, besides what we've already heard, who
it's not public.
It's not a public hearing.
It's just a hearing? Okay.
It's just a first reading of the ordinance, put it out to the public and allow you to discuss it. Also, I'd ask you to invite your sheriff up to get his opinions. And recognize that while Commissioner Godin wants the license part removed, there's still a bunch of regulations in this ordinance about the regulation of dogs and animals that has not been removed.
And further to Mike's point, if we have to take $600 from the general fund to put towards this, I mean, sign me up, you know.
Do we want to invite the sheriff up?
I will do that in just a second.
I personally feel like if we do this, I would consider it a lack of responsibility as county managers. That's my personal opinion.
I wanted to clarify, Mr. Chairman, I'm not in favor of, or I am in favor of repealing this, and my comment wasn't that responsible dog owners would get the license, but responsible dog owners will put name tags on there, not dog owners, but pet owners. Anybody puts contact info and tags, whether it's an official license or not, everywhere I've ever lived, that's a pretty common practice. And so what my point is, a license, an enforced license is not the difference between people tagging their pets or not, because anybody would do it. That's a license isn't the only path to do that. You can go down to Petco or wherever and get a license. So I just wanted to clarify that was my point there. So
thank you for that. Thanks for clearing that up. And Shane, you can't speak to this, I'm sorry. But so I think all the commissioners have voiced this. This is the first hearing. We'll have a second hearing and some public comment on that. But in the meantime, I'm going to recognize what the DA said. I'm going to ask the sheriff to come up and speak what he feels about this, so that we can all get a real good idea of what we're going to be doing here in the next meeting, probably.
Thank you, commissioners. Just a couple of thoughts when I've seen this come across the agenda is, no matter which choice you decide to do, I do ask that you leave in the ordinance several things. One is dog at large. Make sure that stays in the ordinance, because that's just a detriment to our society when them dogs are just running free. And second, we need to be able to track vaccinations. Rabies has to be tracked, and that's one of the things that is mandated when they come and license their dog, is that they actually have to show proof of vaccinations. And the one that we require is the rabies. So as you're moving forward to adjust this ordinance or something along those natures, I ask that you pay specific attention to those two things. Caitlin's right, that's how we get a lot of the dogs back, is through the identification tag or the license, because the license has a number, and if it's with the city or the county, we can go back and identify that dog. Commissioner Bolus is correct. If you care for your pet, you're going to have some type of identification on them. Anyway, I know my pets have identification on them 24/7. They're never out without it. So whichever way you go with this, those are the things that I would ask you to make sure stay in an ordinance, and that there's penalties and things that go along with those. So we don't need a rabies outbreak in White Pine County ever. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Does any other commission have anything to add to this first reading? I'll leave it for the commission. I can't speak to you, George, on this one, I'm sorry. But any other commissioner before we close this?
Yeah, I just want to say, even though the cost is the $595.95 so far as the expense, out of that $1,160, there's still let's see, $564 that goes into the county coffers, and I'm sorry, I don't agree that should be thrown away.
Okay.
I'd
But we'll be
like to-
addressing.
I was just gonna mention the principle, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the principle here isn't a financial one. It's about not having the government think it has to manage every little thing of everyone's life. And I would chalk this up just like firearms control or anything else. Just because it's illegal doesn't mean people don't do it. And I bet we would all be maybe not surprised to find out if we, you know, truly got a poll of the whole county of how many people, you know, are or are not licensing their pets. And it just seems like an unnecessary thing. It's not actually stopping any problems. It's like, yeah, anyway, I'm just looking at the numbers of how many citations and how many are happening compared to the amount of animals are in this county, and it's like a drop in the bucket. And I'm just thinking this is such a waste of time and effort for not much benefit, so.
I mean, to that point, I mean, we have it later on our agenda, but our governor, you know, wants to try to enforce background checks on private firearm sales. This is down the same rabbit hole principally. I mean, how are we gonna, you know, enforce someone who gets their puppy and never licenses it? Just saying.
I'm sorry, I think that the analogy is way too far.
Very good. Dogs don't have guns.
I'm just gonna
Well,
read,
I'm a conservative, and that's where it is, and if you don't like it, sorry.
It's brought up, and it's fine, it's on the agenda, it's out in the public, as everything else. One item on, does anyone else have anything?
I'm just gonna read the title into the record, we can move on, that's all this is. This proposed ordinance amending chapter 8.04 of the White Pine County Code, repealing the requirement to license dogs.
Okay. And I just wanted to add one comment to what Scott just brought to our attention, which wasn't part of the way I feel. And vaccination of animals, rabies in particular, is very, very, very important. And if this forces people to license their dog and show vaccination that their pet is, and I don't care what side of the table we're on, that part of the ordinance is an absolute must, because with the licensing of the dog, they have to show vaccination of the pet. And that, one way or the other, we'll have a second reading, and I concur with Scott on the rabies. I think that's, to me, is really a valid thing. But we will be having a second hearing and a vote on this probably the next meeting, Mike, is that about right?
Probably not the next meeting, but the following.
Okay, probably in February sometime. Anyway, with that all being said, and this was just the first reading, and there's no public comment, we are gonna move on. So the 9:30 will close that, and it's about a quarter till, we got plenty. Mike, can we go back to Scott's item
Yes.
here? Okay, we're gonna go back to page 3, under item 2, elected officials, Scott Henroyd, and item 1B. Item 1B is discussion for possible action, the approval of resolution 2020-06, stating White Pine County's general support and concurrence with the plaintiff's position and lawsuit in Nevada Can et al. Versus the state of Nevada. The suit seeks declaratory relief / judicial finding that Nevada's only enacted red flag law, AB 291, is in violation of Nevada citizens' Second Amendment right, and / or that the process by which the red flag law is enforced lacks sufficient constitutional due process and therefore should be held invalid. See a copy of the suit attached herein as backup for this item, and I'm going to speak to Sheriff Henroyd and to the DA to give us their thoughts on this, because I think that's where it originates, and that's where we're going to be hearing the right thing or the wrong.
Of course, and I'll defer to our sheriff. This was brought by him to the office, and we worked with him to prepare this resolution for the commission to consider.
Okay. Scott?
And I truly appreciate the DA's office in assisting with that. I hope that each one of you had an opportunity to read the lawsuit. AB 291, in my opinion, violates many amendments of our Constitution of the United States, particularly the 2nd, the 4th, and the 14th Amendment, in my opinion. So I asked the DA's office to draft a resolution that I hope that each one of you will support. That way we can send it to the governor and let him know that White Pine County isn't going to fall to these type of tyrannies. So
Excuse me, Scott, your copy of your resolution is behind the ordinance that I gave you in that paperclip packet.
That last,
Yeah.
The red flag law went into effect January 1st of this year. And I think it's important that we send a message to our governor that we support the Second Amendment and most of all due process. This eliminates the due process out of the judicial system, which I feel is extremely important, that individuals that are going to have their firearms taken away have a voice in that. It shouldn't just be a hearsay that is brought in front of a judge and then an order is signed and then expecting law enforcement to enforce that. Every person should have the right to go in and defend themselves and face their accusers. And that is in our Constitution of the United States. So I'm just asking for the Commissioner's support in this matter.
Sheriff, I wanted to just say thank you, and this isn't criticism of any other sheriffs we have in the state, but I appreciate the way that you're handling this with honor and not, you know, because we can kick rocks and throw it in their face and throw a fit, but I feel like having a strong stance but maintaining, just being civil with them leaves the door open for other opportunities to work with these people that disagree with us, but we're holding the line on not allowing them to infringe on freedom. I appreciate that.
And you know, the lawsuit's going to be heard one way or the other. The judge that it's filed in the First Judicial District in Carson City, I hope that he actually will hear it and make a stance. If not, I'm sure this will be in the Nevada Supreme Court's lap, and then we will have a definitive action there, and maybe it might end up in the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll see where it goes. But you're right, Commissioner Bullis, this is something that the courts need to decide and send us the clear message on where the Second Amendment does stand. But I believe that this lawsuit really lies it out, and I support it 100%.
Awesome.
I just want to say, you know, thank our sheriff and our DA's office and, you know, other law enforcement that, you know, they stand with the people and, you know, uphold our rights.
I'd like to echo that. So many places we see our law enforcement says, well, it came down the line, we're stuck with it, too bad. And here we've got a sheriff and a district attorney and our other law enforcement agencies that are able to realize that that a law like this that is just repugnantly flagrant towards our Constitution just cannot stand and cannot be enforced. And I appreciate you taking notice and taking a stand.
I support this wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
So we need a motion here, Mr.
I
Chairman?
want to hear if the DA has.
Just want to know if there are any questions about, there's two things going on here. One, what this red flag law is, and two, why is this lawsuit, why is the holding, what the Supreme Court did last year in another case, what that was about and how it affects this, if there's any questions about that.
I have one, I want to go along the lines of what Ian just said, and the way you're handling this is absolutely the right way, I support it. But one thing I really want to make clear, because we discussed this a meeting or two ago, is that we are abiding by the law. We took an oath to abide by the law. We're not going out and saying we're refusing to do something. We're going to obey the law. Do we agree with it? And that's what this resolution says, that we don't agree, that we as a county sign on with all of our other constituents, that we think this needs to be a good hard look taken at, no matter how far it goes in the courts. But also, we are law-abiding citizens of the county, and our sheriff and our DA are not put out on a limb to where they have to make a stand to say, to voice an opinion against it, or to actually take action against it. That, to me, is most important, that we're obeying the law, but we're saying we don't agree with this. We think it needs a real strong look, and I agree with that, like all the rest of the commissioners. That's right, and I think the approach you're taking by not standing out and saying, I'm not doing this or that, you're saying, I'll do the law, but we want this, a good hard look to be taken at this. And let's hear what the Supreme Court, whoever does the final say on this, and the Second Amendment rights are protected, the rights of the citizens are protected, but also the county is following the letter of the law, that we are obeying the law, that we don't agree, you don't have to agree with laws, but you have to obey them. That's all I can say.
Due process
Right.
in this country is important and shouldn't be ignored.
I also do disagree